The smell behind the church in 2023, a landscaper working behind an old wooden church in rural Pennsylvania hit something solid beneath the soil. It wasn't a tree root. It wasn't stone. It was a skull. Over the next 6 weeks, forensic investigators will uncover the skeletal remains of at least 14 bodies, most of them children. And what shocked investigators even more than the bodies was the silence, because the church knew, the town knew, and for 32 years, no one said a word. A horrifying discovery in the earth on April 6, 2023, in the small town of Coldwater, Pennsylvania. A hired gardener began clearing overgrown land behind St. Matthew's Church, a building that had stood quietly on the edge of town since 1929. He was there to prepare a garden for a spring celebration. But within hours, he ran to the front of the church, shaking. In the shallow pit behind the chapel, he had dug up what appeared to be human bone. Police arrived and taped off the area. By the end of the week, forensic teams had uncovered 5 complete skeletons, all in varying stages of decay. 3 were confirmed to be children. The site was reclassified. This wasn't just a burial site. This was a mass grave. The church with a disturbing history. St. Matthew's was small, old-fashioned, and for decades, it was run by the same priest, Father Michael Leclerc. He was quiet, conservative, and beloved by many parishioners. But there had always been rumors, especially about the basement. Former altar boys remembered being told never to go down there. Some said they were locked in as punishment. Others described dark confessions, sudden disappearances of fellow churchgoers, and questions that went unanswered. In 1991, a 12-year-old girl named Bethany Crowder vanished just 1 block from the church. Her case was never solved. The priest who last saw her, Father Michael. The missing children. Nobody investigated. From 1989 to 2003, Coldwater and surrounding towns had a strange pattern of child disappearances. Officially, most were listed as runaways. But families disputed this. In 1994, 9-year-old Christopher Reyes vanished after an Easter service at St. Matthew's. He had walked to the church with his sister, but never returned home. In 1997, twins Emma and Ella Griggs, aged 11, were last seen attending catechism class at the same church. In 2002, a new priest briefly replaced Father Michael for just 18 months. During that time, the disappearances stopped. Then he was reassigned, and they began again. Father Michael and the Whisper Network. Behind closed doors, some members of the congregation had begun to speak. Quietly, carefully, there was rumors that Father Michael had been accused internally more than once. But the diocese had simply moved him. One report even mentioned a 1995 internal investigation by church officials, and that investigators were told by legal counsel to burn the documents. Survivors claimed abuse, but there were no charges. Coldwater was a small town. Speaking out meant becoming an outcast, and as the grave grew, so did the silence. The first whistleblower, silenced in 2004, a former altar boy named Daniel Kessler, came forward publicly. He wrote a letter to the local paper claiming he was abused by Father Michael at age 10, and that others were too. The letter was published. 2 weeks later, Kessler was found dead in a motel outside town. Official cause: overdose, but friends say he was sober, focused, planning a lawsuit. The case was quietly closed. The church never addressed it. A pattern of disappearances across states. Father Michael moved to churches in Maryland, West Virginia, and went upstate to New York. In each town, the pattern repeated: missing children. Allegations: no arrests. A retired state trooper in New York tracked down a 1998 case eerily like Coldwater's. A boy named Liam Whitley who vanished after volunteering in a food drive. The priest who led that food drive, Father Michael. But somehow, no national database ever connected the dots. The cemetery that wasn't back in Coldwater, residents had assumed the land behind the church was an old family cemetery. But when forensic anthropologists examined the grave site, they found something chilling. None of the remains were properly buried. No coffins, no burial records, no ceremonial indicators. Bodies were stacked with rope marks on bones. Others were bound in ways suggesting restraint. This wasn't a cemetery. It was a dumping ground. The mass grave unearthed. Finally, over the next 4 months, the dig expanded. Total remains recovered: 14.10 of them were children. Local archives were searched for death records. Nothing matched. No obituaries.as. Public pressure mounted. Pennsylvania. State police issued a full criminal investigation into St. Matthew's, and soon, old church members began speaking. Under the condition of anonymity, one former nun said it plainly. We knew there were secrets. We just didn't know they were buried. DNA, lies, and a 32-year web of silence. In 2024, DNA advances helped match 4 of the children remains to missing children from the 90s. One was Christopher Reyes. Another was Bethany Crowder. Their families were told, 30 years after they vanished, that they had been within a mile of the home the whole time. Father Michael was now 84. He had retired in Florida. When arrested, he said only 6 words. They told me to keep quiet. The survivors who fought to be heard in the wake of the arrests. Dozens of survivors came forward. Some shared stories of abuse. Others spoke of being told to look the other way. A group of 7 former parishioners filed a civil suit against the Diocese of Harrisburg. In it, they alleged systematic cover-ups, destroyed documents, and coercion of victims. Their suit revealed an internal memo from 1993 that admitted potential legal exposure if graves are discovered, meaning they knew. They just never thought they'd get caught. Who protected the church, and why? But the deeper investigators looked, the more questions emerged. Why didn't police pursue disappearances? Why were death records altered or missing? Why were whistleblowers discredited or ignored? The answer: a network of protection. Local law enforcement had close ties to church leadership. The district attorney's brother was on the parish board, and for decades, the unwritten rule was simple: protect the church at all costs. What justice looks like, and what it doesn't. In May 2025, Father Michael LeClaire was convicted on 14 counts of conspiracy to conceal homicide and 12 counts of sexual assault. He was sentenced to life in prison. But no one else, no bishops, no board members, no diocesan officials, faced charges. Survivors say it's not enough because, for 32 years, their town kept a secret buried in plain sight, and those who buried it still walk free. How many more graves? Coldwater was just the beginning. Across America, more churches are being investigated. More hidden graves are being uncovered. And after years, sometimes decades, survivors are finally being heard, finally being believed. But here's the terrifying question we still have to ask. How many more graves are out there? And who still knows exactly where they are? If this story shocked you, imagine how many others are still buried in silence. Like this video, subscribe, and share it, because the only way these stories stop is when we bring them into the light. And remember, sometimes the truth isn't buried that deep. You just have to dig for it.